This is Sporting Life.
Welcome along to the Sporting Life Racing Podcast. David Orr, joined by Matt Bucklebank, David Johnson, Billy Nash and Graham Cunningham. It's Winter Millions time. I don't know if it's a singular minute. It's Winter Millions time this weekend anyway in Berkshire. 3 good days racing coming up. We're going to take a look at that first. Let's start with the BetMGM Clarence House Chase. David Johnson, I'll start with you. Last week on this very podcast, Ben Linfoot exclusively revealed that the Prestbury Cup was heading home. John Bond via Nergamine. Surely it's another chance to get the Union Jacks out this one. One for the home team.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's one of them where you look at the ratings and then you look at the betting and you sort of have to ask yourself, well, what's going on here? Think even on BHA ratings, Energamine is £1 ahead of John Bon, and on Timeform ratings, Energamine is £5 ahead of John Bon. But we need to sort of look a little bit deeper, I think. And obviously, the rating that Energamine has there that has him £5 clear, that comes from quite a long time ago, and he didn't run to anything like that level when we saw him off that belated return at Cork in the Hilly Way. I mean, I guess you could say the Hilly Way is looking a little bit better than it did at the time, given what Banbridge obviously did in the King George. But Dino Blue appreciates it. Blue Lord, they rather let the form down over Christmas. So I think you can see why Energamine is coming over, and it's an obvious spot for him, having run in the race previously, even though he's obviously been beaten in it twice. But I will be expecting John Bon to probably have his measure, given that he's obviously got fewer miles on the clock. And we just know that he's going to turn up and run to that sort of 170-odd level. Whereas Energamine, he's got quite a few runs superior to that. But whether he can still produce that level, I would have my doubts now.
GC, it does boil down to that, doesn't it? So what number can Energamine run to as an 11-year-old?
Absolutely. 11 is the key number here. I don't think any 11-year-old has won this race since it was turned into back to a grade 1 level weights, set weights in 07, 08. Undersoul won it at 10. Elixir de Nuts won it at 10. But Energamine has had a long while off. We know exactly how good he was. We can't say that he ran to that mark in the Hilly Way, because I think Banbridge was giving him £10 that day. Pretty sure he was. So the clock's ticking. He's had fewer runs over fences than John Bon, so he's not been over-raced, as Ben Linfoot pointed out in an excellent piece on sportinglife.com the other day. And his jumping still remains aggressive and exciting to watch, so I'm looking forward to the race. I think Edward Stone is slightly overpriced at 10-1, even though I think he's 0 for 5 against his old rival John Bon. It's a small select field, and the key question is, has Father Time taken the toll on Energamine's formidable powers? Because if he hasn't, this is a proper race.
Hey, do you think there's still a monster performance under the locker with Energamine?
Yeah.
That's for you, Billy. Yeah, sorry.
It's hard to say, isn't it? I mean, like the lad said, he is 11. I'm sure you may have heard Dan Barber's piece on the Nick Luck podcast there last week, I think it was, talking about veterans. And it's, Tidal Bay did run to a mark of 170 when he was an 11-year-old, but that's the exception to the rule. 11-year-olds tend not to run to that sort of level. And we know how good John Bond is. We know how consistent he is. We'd be expecting a performance in at least the high 160s from John Bond, certainly touching the 170 mark. And can Energamine get back up to that? It's a big ask for him. Like the lads were saying, he is at least, he's relatively lightly raced over fences. He should come on a good bit from his reappearance, which was an encouraging run. But at the same time, he does look up against it here. He's only been beaten twice over fences, and both times was this particular race, once at Ascot, once at Cheltenham. So I can't see him making a third time lucky as an 11-year-old. Be great to see him win it, but all things point to John Bond really this weekend.
Matt, one theme this year, the Mullins British Raiders haven't quite been ticking over, seemingly as you might expect. But Ben Linfoot, Corporal Jones-esque, walking around with "Don't Panic" message in his article this week, that Mullins pre-Christmas is a different beast to Mullins post-Christmas. What are your thoughts on this, Clarence House?
The Mullins thing isn't a huge concern for me. I get the gist of Scoop's piece, and you're talking about the champion trainer in Britain, and you've got to shine a light on that kind of iffy record. It's, what was it, one win from a dozen runners in the UK since October. But I believe them when they said last year the British trainers title over here, it's a bit of an afterthought. It kind of always was for them. And I just think because the stars aligned last year and they happened to win, I don't really think that Mullins has gone, right, I've got to go out and defend my title in Britain as well as Ireland. I just don't believe that to be the case at all. So when it comes to his runners in this country, he works back from Cheltenham, he works back from Aintree, and anything else along the way is a bonus. Now, obviously, he has had the ammunition to win a Clarence House a few times in the past. Great to see it back at Ascot, and we're in for a treat of a race. Hopefully, we see something similar to that Shishkin race. I watched that again this morning. It was fantastic, and it was brilliant to see an Ergamin at Cork show that enthusiasm. It wasn't just like, oh, he ran to a decent level and it was quite a promising comeback run. He showed real zest for it. He really jumped okay until late on. His jumping was a little bit ropey, and obviously he almost caused that issue and bringing down Banbridge there at the end. I think John Bon is going to take the world a beating, in short.
Creating this title was an afterthought for Willie Mullins. It's not for Dan Skelton, JC. That and the David Power Cup seem to be his two target for this campaign. Protectorate in Sunday's Fleur de Lys at Windsor would be a big runner for that team.
Yeah. This is a good race, or it stacks up to be a good race. There's not going to be too many runners, but they're going to be pretty high quality and they're going to be pretty closely matched. So I think we have to take the view that Pic D'Orhy is the likely leader and is perfectly capable of going really close. I think I'm going to take the view that Jello's an improving horse, and his jumping was deadly accurate when he mastered Protectorate with something to spare at Peterborough, at Huntingdon in the Peterborough Chase. And I do think Jello is very interesting because he's definitely got better this season based on, I think, what we saw first at Exeter and then last time at Huntingdon. We've also got the formerly cement-footed, should I say, Ahoy Senor. Now, I'm not in any mood to be too positive about him after what he showed or didn't show in the Betfair Chase, admittedly on gluey ground. But do bear in mind, lads, he gets £8. £8 from the other main fancies here. And if the Ahoy Senor, who ran Jerry Calong so close at Aintree, turns up, getting £8, he's a danger to all. I'm not sure what to make of Protectorate. I was a big fan of him last spring. I know David was for the Ryanair Chase. I don't think his two runs this season have been especially inspiring. But as Dan Skelton said straight after Huntingdon, he fought Harry all the way around. He was always edging and inclining to his left. So going back left-handed should suit Protectorate this weekend. Strong race, closely knit race. I think I'm a bit of a Jello fan here. I think he's a horse who's suddenly on the rise. He was pretty good last season, not good enough in the Turners against Grey Dawning and co, but ran pretty well. I think he's a better horse now and a horse who's still on the up.
David, as GC said, you were keen Protectorate in the spring. Can you turn that Peterborough Chase form out with Jello for you on Sunday?
I wouldn't be in a hurry to be backing him, particularly at the prices. I think he's sort of 5-2 favourite, isn't he? And would he be much shorter than that if he came here in peak form? I don't think he would, to be honest. And you're sort of looking at, I know that there are the excuses there for that run. They took an age to try and back right-handed. I think they ended up rolling the dice at Huntingdon just to see if they could make a King George horse out of him. And obviously that project was soon on the cutting room floor. He's obviously got the ability to go close in a race like this, but I was really impressed with Jello, like GC. And you look at these horses here, pretty much we know where we are with the vast majority of them. We know the borderline Group 1 standard, mainly Group 2 standard, but that's as good as they are. Whereas with Jello, we've seen him look really good in that Grade 2 last time, with the potential to maybe go and win a Grade 1. And I mean, if he's going to have to step up and take this, but I do think there's a good chance he could do that.
Mark, as GC and DJ have said, it's a fascinating race. What are your early views on it?
Yeah, it could be nip and tuck, couldn't it? I don't think there's a huge amount between them, to be honest. I'm sure Billy's going to come on to Indiana Dream because he is a fascinating one who might be open to a huge amount of improvement. Not seen him for a long time, and the way that AJ O'Neill was speaking just the other day, it sounds like he's going to sort of come on for a run. A fact-finding mission for him, but whereas you look at Paul Nicholls and Dan Skelton. You go back through their stable tours at the start of this season, and both of them are talking about this Winter Million meeting quite significantly. Protectorat obviously gets a pretty big mention for this race specifically, and he's been aimed at the race again. He ran really well in it last year. He was giving Lompresse £4, wasn't he? Not beaten far at all, just a couple of lengths. That was at Lingfield. I think Protectorat is the horse to beat, as you asked at the top, but I wouldn't be ruling out Pig Dory either. Nicholls and Skelton, they know fine well that come Cheltenham that Henderson and Mullins are going to dominate those Grade 1 prizes. So these are really important prizes in the title race. Pig Dory, his record going this way around left-hand is a little bit patchy, isn't he? He's won a couple of times, including a Grade 1 at Aintree, but he has fallen a couple of times, pulled up a couple of times going this way around. He's sort of seen as a Grade 2 right-hand track kind of horse, but I think he might give Protectorat a race. And of the pair, I think we're looking at sort of 4-1 Pig Dory and 5-2. I do think Protectorat's short enough, as David says.
We've got a couple of barriers. Jimmy Colom's not coming over. Gordon made that very clear about 15 minutes after he was entered for the race. But he's not coming. Journey with Me might come. Field Door might come. What do you make of those two? And Indiana Dream, when we did the pre-season Willie Mullins stable visit, we asked him about Indiana Dream, thinking it was still with Willie. And he was genuinely upset it had gone. I think he's very talented. He's a fragile horse. What's his form stacking up like from Ireland, and what sort of impact do you think he could make too?
I'll start off with Indiana Dream. I think I'm right in saying that Willie described him as a potential Gold Cup horse at one stage. Look, he's a horse we don't know much about. He had won once in France before Willie got him. He won a maiden hurdle by a street on his debut for Willie. Really impressive, won by about 15 lengths. That was in January, and we didn't see him until the following December of that year, where he won a beginner's chase at Navan, again by a long way. He beat a horse of Gordon Elliott's called Saint Felicien, who has a pretty high level of form himself. He was running well in the plate at Cheltenham off a mark in the mid-140s. He got brought down about 3 or 4 out. Who knows where he would have run, but he had a decent level of form, and Indiana Dream just swatted him aside at Navan. But unfortunately, that was over 12 months ago, so he's clearly a very fragile horse. The talent is there. He is only a 7-year-old, but this is a big ask for a horse that's only had 3 runs in his life and only 1 over fences. So very much a watching brief, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him run well. The other two, Journey with Me and Field Door, both in the Rob Coeur colours. Both of them are also entered at Thurles and the Horse and Jockey, so I'm not sure if either will go. Journey with Me would be probably the more interesting of the pair, in my opinion. He's a horse that kind of falls between 2 stools, and that he doesn't really stay 3 miles, and he's not good enough for Grade 1s. But he is a decent, second level chaser, we'll call him. Grade 2, this sort of trip would suit him. He's a little bit hit or miss, but on his day he'd have a real chance in this. And if he's right, then I'd give him the squeak. But we were talking about the form of the Willie Mullins horses in the UK. I just have a slight question mark about the form of the Henry de Bromhead horses at the moment. Although he had a really good Christmas period, I think he had 8 winners between Stephen's Day and New Year's Eve. He's not from 25 in 2025 so far. So I just have that would be niggling at the back of my mind. Fildor, we know plenty about him. He's got that massive price tag sort of hanging around his neck from the Gordon Elliott disposal sale, 620 grand. There's no way he's going to pay back even a fraction of that the way he's been running. His farm figures are misleading, Dave. His farm figures are 2-1-2, but he finished second in the race at Clonmel to St. Sam, where he was never competitive. St. Sam was miles clear for most of that race. Then Fildor passed a few beaten horses late on. He won a 2-runner chase at Thurles, and he finished second in a 3-runner race at Ascot to Jungle Boughey. Again, a race he didn't ever look like winning. It's very hard to know where he is at the moment, but I couldn't see him winning this, even if he does travel.
That Indiana Dream, that's a really deep pond for him to be diving in this weekend, isn't it? After a long layoff. And yes, he put up a good performance first time over fences, but he didn't half lurch at a few. So, I hope he comes through it fine, because he's obviously got lots of potential. But it's a shame that horses like that can't have a slightly smoother transition after a long break, isn't it? If you've got to go into a Grade 2 against really hard-knocking horses like Pig Dory and Protectorat and Jello, that's a tough school to go into after a long break.
He won't be ridden forward either, and tactics will probably be quite key in this race, I suspect. Harry Cobden, I'm pretty sure in the pre-Christmas meeting there at Windsor, it paid to be fairly handy, if not on the bunny from the start.
See, Paul Nicholls has just come back from Barbados. Bit of winter sun as the horses had their flu jabs, but he's returning with the chance to silence the doubters. There's nothing the man enjoys more. Friday's Lightning Novices Chase. We've got Caldwell Potter dropping back to 2 miles. It's an interesting enough race. There's no load of Sud, obviously racing for the same owners as Caldwell Potter. Caldwell Potter's been given the green light. Nicholls wants him at 2 miles, wants him in deep ground. I think he's going to get both of those. What are you expecting from the Potter on Friday? And that's to you. Sorry, JC.
Oh, sorry. I'm hoping he wins and wins well. Sorry about that, lads. I thought his jumping at Cheltenham was tremendous. He's aggressive, he enjoys it, and he has a right go at his fences. Now, the record reflects that he was beaten 13 lengths in the end by Django Bye and Springwell Bay. Springwell Bay has polished that form to no uncertain terms in a good handicap at Cheltenham. Caldwell Potter was giving Django Bay £5, and some people, and understandably, took it as a reverse. Some people took it that he didn't get 2.5 miles. I'm not quite sure about that myself, but either way, I agree. 2 miles testing ground should be a good slot for him, and he needs to get back on track here. And I think and hope that he might. Gidley Park's obviously a good horse. I don't know what went wrong first time over fences for him. Personal Ambition hasn't won over fences yet, but he's shown pretty useful form, and he was unlucky when he got the last all wrong at Ascot last time. You wear it well. I must admit, I was a little disappointed with her at Warwick a few weeks ago, 5 weeks ago. So Caldwell Potter will be a short price, and I think he deserves to be. He's about 4 to 6 in the moment. A shame that Windsor haven't got more runners for a race with how much? Let's have a look for the winner. Over 40 grand. It's not, an irresistible pot, but it's a nice one. So I hope he gets back on the right track. I noticed, this is a tiny thing, they paid how much for him? €740,000. I think it was a record. He's gained a new owner, I think, since last time. Until the 11th of Jan, it was Ferguson, Mason, Hales and Doan. And now it's Ferguson, Mason, Hales, Doan and Hogarth. So Mr. Hogarth or Mrs. Hogarth, whoever it may be offsetting a little bit of that €740,000.
Hopefully some
Gidley
40,000. Sorry,
Gidley Park, quickly. He's the one that was found to have had an irregular heartbeat, which I hadn't actually realised, but his trainer Harry Fry recently revealed that he'd been suffering from the same thing, the trainer himself. So he said he knew how the horse felt. But it's not long ago, is it? With this horse, Fry was talking really highly of him, and he seemed to sort of have the world at his feet after he beat. It was actually lucky place, wasn't it? He beat him at Cheltenham on trials day. So it's not just. There's substance to his novice hurdle form, and then he went to the Albert Bartlett, potentially didn't stay, but he ran okay, finished 6th, and then obviously the absolute no-show, very forgettable run on Chasing Debut. So he's worth another chance. He's had a break, he's had time off, so hopefully he can at least give Caldwell Potter a race in as GC says, a grade 2 lacking in depth.
David, we're used to the Lightning being at Doncaster. It's at Windsor. I mean, you're used to seeing sprint handicaps, Monday nights under the trees, glass of champagnes. They're going to get down and dirty. At least it'll offer something different as a spectacle, won't it, than whiz around Windsor on Sunday?
Yeah, exactly that. And, I think the whole thing is quite good. ARC, they announced this meeting when it was at Lingfield a couple of years ago, so quite a lot of fanfare, and I think some of us that were used to sort of seeing these kind of things coming along and thinking, well, actually, how often are they going to have to pay this prize money? Because Lingfield in winter is so difficult to actually keep getting on, whether it's the frost or usually the waterlogging. So, they've obviously seen that, acted on it, and, Windsor returning to jumping. The trainers seem very happy about it, and I watched a fair bit of that first meeting back on Sunday, and it looks a very fair track. Obviously, it's on the tight side for a jumps course, but I think, it's going to be a spectacle. The prize money's there. It's just a shame that they haven't got quite as many runners as what they would have hoped for a race like this. But I think that's more a novice chase problem, isn't it, than a Windsor jumps problem. So, yeah, we'll see how Caldwell Potter goes here. I'm like GC, I think coming back to 2 miles is the way to go with him. And he's certainly impressed with his jumping at Cheltenham. And this looks obviously a real good spot for him to potentially go back up in grade at the Cheltenham Festival, maybe, and throw his hat into what's already an interesting Arkle ring.
It's a big weekend for the Caldwell dispersal horses potential, isn't it? Caldwell Potter, €740,000. How much was Fleur de Lys, Billy?
620.
Jesus. And Imagine's also, I think he's entered in the is it the Peter Marsh Chase at Haydock? He was a snip at 3 something, I think, or was it 4 something?
The waiting with Loader Sud, he goes to Warwick, the Kingmaker. Dan Skelton's confirmed this morning.
Yep.
In terms of Caldwell Potter, he went for 7 on the back of that novice hurdle form in Ireland. Where do you think the ceiling is? Do you think this is a potential Grade 1 top-notcher?
Well, they certainly paid enough money. They certainly bought him as a potential Grade 1 top-notcher. And look, he was a Grade 1 winning novice hurdler. He did look very progressive over hurdles. I thought it was interesting that Nichols resisted the temptation to run him in one of those at one of the big spring festivals. He could have run him at Aintree or Punchestown back end of the season, and he didn't. Maybe that was just to preserve him for novice chases. But I suppose the interesting thing about Caldwell Potter was his very best performances in Ireland came on really bad ground, and maybe that's what he needs. Maybe he just needs heavy ground, and whereas he'll get it this time of the year, he might not get that at Cheltenham or Aintree later on in the term. So I think, yeah, certainly I'd be disappointed if he got beaten this weekend, but I think going forward, maybe soft ground is very important to him,
Yeah, echo that. I wouldn't anticipate him shining on spring ground. So if there are good races around at the moment, they need to have a cut at them, I think.
It's interesting to see Nichols as well, just scratching his head a little bit with another one of his quality horses, because he's doing it with Regent Stroll as well. We're so used to seeing Nichols sort of running horses and just stepping them up gradually in distance because they all seemingly stay. And he's obviously got these 2 horses that he's having to go back in distance. That one's going back to 2 miles in novice hurdles as well. And obviously Caldwell Potter, because I think some people have argued that at Cheltenham he looked like he kind of was a bit one-paced, and we're maybe expecting to see him over 2.5 again, or even 3. But so back to 2 miles, soft ground, it could be just what he wants.
Promises to be a fascinating contest. Now, Billy, the strength of the British 2.5 mile hurdlers, has understandably scared Willie off. He isn't running any of his in the other big race on that card. We've got Langley back, though. Billy, he could be bidding for a 3rd successive win at the Cheltenham Festival in March. But so far, Dan Skelton's theory that this horse doesn't fire through the cold winter months, he's certainly sticking to that, Langley.
Seems to have got it bang on, Dave. He hasn't fired so far this season. He ran okay the first day, not so well the last day. But yeah, his best form tends to come in sort of March, April time. So again, that might happen this year. This is an interesting contest without being top class. Just to give you the time form ratings, Nemean Line is going to come out top on time form ratings by £1 from Blue King Daru, and about £3 below them then is Iberico Lord, who's obviously very interesting, dropping back from chasing. Although he won the first day, he wasn't particularly convincing and took a heavy fall last time, so no surprise to see him back over hurdles. He's obviously going to be a big player here. Nemean Line comes here on the back of a handicap win at Hereford. He's a very solid performer. Is he quite up to this level? I'm not sure. Blue King Daru, he just didn't seem to stay in the long walk, so back down to this trip should suit him. And you couldn't rule out Salvator, who was running okay at Cheltenham, fell at the last in the red keel when he was running on, so he's got a squeak. It's a very open contest. It's not one that I'd be willing to have a bet in at the moment. I suppose Iberico Lord, if neck on the block, I might go for him, but it's a race I'd be happy to sit and watch, Dave.
He's happy to sit and watch. Matt, what do you make of it? We've just got the final entries. What's your early thoughts on that race?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's open, but Iberico Lord's a big player here. You go back to the Betfair hurdle last year, he beat Loader Sud, and he beat him quite stylishly, giving him £5 on the day. He's a quality horse. He went into the champion hurdle. Obviously, Nicky's horses were under the weather at the time, and he's come out and won at Kempton, then fell. So back to the drawing board. But he's dead interested. He's fairly he's completely unraced over 2.5 miles. So he must have soft ground. So I think it's a perfect spot for him. I do have a little segment here, Dave, saying Friday wager. Is now the time to expand a little bit on that? It's actually in the 1:15. It's the 3 mile novices handicap chase, which has cut up a little bit, but I wanted to mention Deafening Silence. He's just he's one that's been sort of staring at me all season so far. He's Dan and Harry Skelton, surprise, surprise. I think they've had the program book out and looking at this race for a few months for this horse. He's just sitting on real potential. He's had the 2 runs over fences so far this season, which has seen him qualify for this handicap. The official handicapper, really interesting. I had him on 133 coming into the season. He's been beaten 12.5 lengths and 40 lengths, and they've left him on 133. So I'm not the only one expecting this horse to improve a little bit as he goes handicapping. And I think 3 miles is going to really bring out the best in him. He was an impressive winner of a Grade 2 novice hurdle. That was at Sandown last winter. And then he's come out this season and had a couple of spins over fences. It's fair to say he wasn't put into the race particularly early at Cheltenham last time. That was a hot race with Django Bay, wasn't it? And Springwell Bay as well, and Caldwell Potter. Yeah, he was 4th in that race. But yeah, he's definitely one I've had in mind for this race. I think he'll win, Dave. 133.
Neil Phillips, a dear friend, the wine tipster, part owner of Deafening Silence. So he'll be hoping you're right. Can I come back to that good hurdle race? I'm hoping that Nemain Lion can run really well. He's just a pretty good horse, as we know, but he's got 2 mile speed, that horse. And in a small field, around a tight track like Windsor, I think he might be well suited to that. I'd like to see him win. Kerry Lee's got pretty much one really good horse in a yard at the moment. It's him. The others, Henderson, Nichols, etc., have got plenty. So it's a big day for Kerry Lee and Nemain Lion at Windsor.
I think you touched on a key point to that race about the speed test, and there's not a lot of pace in there, is there? You could imagine that they are just going to pot around, and whether it's Nemain Lion or Blue King Daru that ends up best placed, if that does turn into a sprint, it could be 1 or 2 of those. So yeah, an interesting race that, definitely, if for the tactics as much as anything, I think.
Yeah, really looking forward to that action. And Matt, I think that almost had like a 2 points win, Matt, not just a 1 point.
1.5.
1.5, 1.5. Yeah. On the snozzer. GT, we can't leave the weekend in England without a line on the Sky Bet Peter Marsh at Haydock. Only 15 in at the 5-day stage, but he proved Royal Pigalle, jocked up. And it's always great if you see a top-class horse running in a handicap, isn't it?
It is, and we're back on the 11-year-old theme here, aren't we? I think he turned 11 the other day, Royal Pigalle. What a record at Haydock. I think he's 5 from 6 at Haydock. The only defeat was when he was second to a rampant A Plutard in the Betfair Chase. He's won this twice. Won it in 21 off 156 by 16 lengths. Won it in 22 by half a length from Sam Brown off 163. I think either 23 or 24 was kiboshed by the weather. But he comes back after his latest Betfair Chase performance. Excellent defeat of Grey Dawning, well clear. And when it's very deep ground at Haydock, yes, he's knocking on, and yes, he's got a huge weight. But those factors are sort of secondary to the fact that he just keeps going and going and going. So even off the mark of 166, he still looks a live player. Interested to hear what the lads think. I must admit, I'm not much of a Mr. Van Gogh fan. I know it's going to be a real stamina test this weekend at Haydock, but it's 3 miles 1 and a bit. It's not 3 miles 4 or 3 miles 6, and I wonder whether he might get chopped for speed. The horse I think will run a good race, provided he runs, is Kim Bailey and Matt Nichols. Trelawn. People will look at his Ascot defeat and think, well, he ran okay, but not that well. I don't think he was suited by Ascot. If you watch the video, he was constantly trying to lug to the left, and I think he'll be better going left-handed. As we know, he put up a really good performance to get the better of Iroko at Haydock before Christmas. So be quite keen to see how Trelawn gets on. A couple of complete don't knows here in this race. Imagine, for example, Harry Derham still trying to get to grips with him since he got him from the Caldwell dispersal sale. And Gino Bellino, what's he called?
Gelino Bella. I was just going to say him, David.
You go on with him, Matt, because he looked like being a really promising chaser early on, didn't he?
He did, yeah. And this is, you talk about Royal Pigalle, he's just won a Grade 1. Well, he'll have to give thick end of 2 stone to a Grade 1 winner, because Giuliano Bernal did win the novice hurdle at Aintree back in the day. It was a while ago now. He's been very lightly raced since, and he actually had two years off, but he's had the prep run. And to see him back just less than a month later after the hurdles prep run on Boxing Day at Wincanton is encouraging. Yeah, he was staying on. I mean, that Mr. Vanguard must be slow, GC. If you think this is he might be outpaced in the Peter Marsh on heavy ground.
Giuliano Bello, I watched him early on as a chaser, and he looked pretty good, and he looked a really good jumper. Then he came a cropper on Boxing Day when fancied for the Courtauld Star Chase a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
but it's way too early to be writing him down because he's very low mileage over fences. And how much weight is he going to get from Royal Pagaille here?
Just £2 shy of the full 2 stone.
Wow, that's interesting, isn't it?
What can you tell us about Imagine? He was fancied for the Cheltenham handicap, the Paddy Gold Cup, and didn't make a big splash in that. What sort of horse do you think he could develop into?
Say, Dave, and I'm not convinced he's going to get this trip, even though looking at his pedigree, you'd think he probably should, but he was campaigned at much shorter distances by Gordon Elliott. He did nearly all of his running over hurdles over 2 miles. They had a go at the Martin Pipe with him. He was sent off one of the favourites of the Martin Pipe. I think he finished 4th or 5th in it, off a mark of something like 139 or that way. He made a good start over fences. He won his first 2, both over 2 miles, but they were early season contests. I mean, he won a Grade 2 at Punchestown, but it was a 4-runner race, beating Lucid Dreams, who turns up every week in some contest or other. So, he's a useful horse without being much better for Gordon Elliott. Now, there is the potential that stepping up in trip will bring about some improvement, but I would have thought that I was expecting him to run better at Cheltenham. You know, there was the vibes going into Cheltenham on his first start for Harry Derham were quite good. He was strong in the market, and he ran no sort of race whatsoever. So this looks like it's a case of right back to the drawing board to me. Going from the Paddy Power at Cheltenham to the Peter Marsh on heavy ground at Haydock. I don't know, watching brief advice, Dave. Like, as I said, he could improve for the step up and trip, but I wouldn't be willing to back him to find out.
This weekend in Ireland, it's a quiet one. The Horton Jockey, fantastic hotel, stayed there. There's lots of horses double entered, etc. Not quite A-listers with the DRF around the corner.
Exactly. You've hit the nail on the head there. Definitely not quite A-listers. 1 or 2 that possibly were in the past are not anymore. So it looks like it's going to be. We discussed Phil Doran journeying with me. Both of them are in the race. French Dynamite is another one in the Rob Coeur colours that could turn up here. But apart from that, it's mostly Willie Mullins. He has quite a strong hand in this. Horses like Appreciated, Blood Destiny, Classic Getaway, Gentleman to Me, and Kill Crutto had a spin over hurdles recently at Limerick. Of those, I thought Classic Getaway ran pretty okay at Tramore on New Year's Day. He finished 3rd behind Embassy Gardens. Looked like he was going to run better for most of the race. His effort petered out a small bit in the straight, but he could come on for that. But I think Blood Destiny is the most interesting of the Willie horses. He's a horse that goes very well fresh. He had a good campaign over fences last year. Finished 2nd or 3rd to Spillane Tower in the Grade 1 at the Fairyhouse meeting. Didn't run particularly well at Punchestown, but I think you could forgive him that run. So I think his record fresh, 2.5 miles will suit him. Thurles will suit him because it's a kind of a front runner's track. So if he turns up there, I think he'd take all the beating. But as you say, it's these are not top level horses anymore.
Time to look back at 1 or 2 news stories. David, I'll start with you. Your Timeform colleague, Jumps editor Dan Barber, went on the Nick Luck Daily on Tuesday saying that Salvator Mundi is way too short for the Sky Bet Supreme off the back of his Moscow Flyer performance. Do you agree, or do you think Dan was still on the Christmas wine?
You do have to look at that performance and think, well, is that the performance of a horse that should be 7-2 for a Grade 1 at Cheltenham? And I can completely see that. The only trouble is that at the moment, it's not looking like a typical Supreme, is it? You start going down the list of them and you soon quickly thinking, well, that's probably not going to turn up. That may not turn up. That's not going to be good enough. And it wouldn't be surprised to see him potentially start even shorter on the day, even if he goes straight there. So, the issue is, like I say, the form, it just doesn't stack up particularly well. Obviously, everyone can see how well he didn't jump. I think it seems that connections were very much disappointed with the way that he jumped. They were expecting that he would jump better than that. But he, at 7-2 for a race that's, still a couple of months away, I just wouldn't be backing him at the moment. Things may change when nearer the time what he's likely to be running up against. But yeah, I think it's just, we see it quite a lot, don't we? The Willie Mullins supreme factor. And people want to get on the horse because of his record in that race is so good. And it's usually quite clear so early on what his supreme horse is. But no, he wouldn't be for me at this kind of price. Definitely not.
Matt, I know you took a positive view on the performance.
Yeah, in a sense. I mean, I suppose it's slightly my sort of bitter nature to want to go against everyone who's come out saying, "Oh, look how badly he jumped and look how keen he was." But I don't know. I look at Paul Tanner's face after the race, and you listen to Patrick Mullins and what he has to say about him, and they were gutted with the performance, as David said. I think they're absolutely convinced he's miles better than what he was able to show on the weekend. Yeah, you'd like to think they'd know a thing or two about getting one ready for a Sky Bet Supreme. I wouldn't be in a rush to lay him, and it's one of those, isn't it, where people have come out and obviously lots of people have backed this horse anti-post, and you certainly wouldn't be saying to them, "Oh, you've done your money on the back of him winning that race." I think it's a really good stepping stone. Obviously, he'll have to sharpen up, but I went back and watched his Triumph Hurdle, and he popped round Cheltenham perfectly well last season. And if he sort of puts in anything like a smooth round of jumping, then the engine is obviously there, the ability is there.
GC, it was quite interesting. Oh, sorry, David.
No, I was just going to say, nowadays you're supposed to have a strong view on everything, aren't you? But sometimes it's okay to just say, you know what, I'm not sure. Let's wait and see. And David, I think that's how I am with it.
David, thank you. Yeah, that leads me in perfectly. You're dead right to flag that up. The confetti cannons are blasting points all over the place, aren't they? You can't move on social media without someone saying they've got one for the Martin Pike, they've got this. Beware, you're dealing with people who are just firing stuff off with a woefully thin data set. Even for this race, Grade 1, first race of the festival, Romeo Coolio, solid operator, ran really well in the bumper, etc. Grade 1 winner. He goes straight to the festival. Salvator Mundi will go straight to the festival. Of course, he didn't look flash at the weekend. He was trying to quicken against a very slow pace. He was well on top of the line. He's a pretty good horse. But he's run to low 130s on time form figures. That he's 3 or 4 to 1. This thing, Kopek de Board, he's won a maiden hurdle and he jumped super awkwardly. Dublin Racing Festival is going to be absolutely pivotal for him. But Dave, I've got out the Something to Ponder file here. And I want you to log this. Something to ponder, right? JP McManus, JP, Frank, if you find a horse with a 2 mile 5, Turners, that's not the New Lion, put in the Something to Ponder file for the Sky Bet. Is it still Sky Bet Supreme Novices?
It is.
That horse is the best jumper of a hurdle that any of us have seen among these highly rated novices this season. He's also very fast. Did you see the way he laughed at pretty useful winners in the Challow hurdle? Challow be thy name. Matt Brocklebank. It was a very neat headline. Put it in the Something to Ponder file. He's 25 to 1 now. I would be absolutely willing to back the New Lion at 5 or 6 to 1 for the Supreme Novices. He's just a better horse than practically anything we've seen, certainly in Britain and probably in Ireland as well. And they should absolutely keep their options open for the novice races at the Cheltenham Festival. And if JP finds a good staying novice, I'm looking at you, Kay Dorothy, who won that 2.5 mile novice hurdle at Leopardstown over Christmas. If he shapes up into a potential Turner's horse, a big switcheroo is on the cards. Put it in the Something to Ponder file, Dave.
Billy, while I fill in the Something to Ponder file with that very strong argument from GC, you could have the final word on Salvator Mundi and that Sky Bet Supreme picture in general.
Well, I just echo what the lad said. I mean, I suppose Salvator Mundi, you can look at that performance 2 ways. If you fancy him for the Supreme, you'll take plenty positives out of it, in that he won despite pulling really hard, despite not jumping well. He was still well on top of the line. It was his first run for 8 months, so there was plenty of positives to take out of it. If you didn't fancy him for the Supreme before the race, you will say all of those same things as reasons why you shouldn't back him for the Supreme now, plus the fact that he was shortened in the betting for which was hard to believe really off the back of that performance. But yes, like the lad said, this at the moment this does not look like a vintage Supreme. Just looking at the top of the anti-post market, you've Salvator Mundi, you've Romeo Coolio, who on time form ratings is 150p. Salvator Mundi is 132p on time form ratings. As things stand, to me, you look, I've said it before, I think Romeo Coolio is vulnerable at 2 miles. I think he'd be better when he goes out and trip. The rest of the betting, you've Kopek de Board, a Willie Mullins maiden hurdle winner, Haydock, a Willie Mullins maiden hurdle winner, Work Ahead, a Henry de Bromhead maiden hurdle winner, Funicula, who actually runs at Clonmel today, Willie Mullins in a maiden hurdle, and a very interesting horse called Donwave that won twice for Arnaud Shea in France, owned by JP McManus, now in the care of Nicky Henderson. So it's a, you know, that market has, or that race hasn't really developed at all yet. There's lots of water to go under the bridge between now and Cheltenham, and I think the shape of the market will be very different come Cheltenham time.
Well, Billy, is there one British horse among all those horses you named in the betting? I can't think that there was one there.
Donwave is with Nicky Henderson now, so he's won twice in France. So he's the only one at the moment at the top of the anti-post list.
Interesting stuff. Now, DC, you're our Hong Kong, our Far Eastern expert. I'm bound to turn to you to the exciting news that got put to a blaze yesterday. The entries for the Unibet Champion Hurdle include a raider from Japan. I mean, don't know a great deal about him, but my goodness, it's got people talking about potential. Japan just seeking to dominate everywhere now. Is it? We're going to see an armada coming over at future Cheltenhams.
They are, and if you're a time fan, Dave, what's it called, this horse?
Is it all the way or all? It's all something. All the
Japanese raider, I call him.
Japanese raider.
If times are any guide, David Johnson, you can flesh this out. It was a shade under 2 miles, but they run 3 minutes 23, 24 for those good races in Japan. Strictly transferred, he beats Constitution Hill by about 40 to 50 lengths. Now, joking apart, it's a fun angle, good for them. And if Constitution Hill can beat him, I am urging Nicky Henderson, you've got a fresh horse there, Nicky. Reciprocate. Do what Willie Mullins did with Blackstare Mountain and won 465 grand for winning the Nakayama Grand Jump. And that was in 2011 or 2013. So that's going to be worth a lot of gold by now. The Outback Way was third in it for Venetia Williams in the year 2000 and got 120 grand. So there's a lot of money in Japan. So come on, Nicky, you can do it. Eschew Aintree with Constitution Hill and straight out to Japan.
Well, maybe the Japan Cup next year instead of the Fighting Fifth.
Can you imagine these connections when they see the sprinklers the day before the Cheltenham Festival? Like this horse having run on firm ground 3 times, they'll be thinking, "What's going on here? There's water in good to soft ground."
Yeah, I watched his third in a good race in Japan last time, and it looks lightning quick conditions. So he's bred to be quite a good flat horse, and he adds a very romantic, buccaneering, enterprising layer to the Champion Hurdle. But no, it takes a big pair of rose-coloured glasses to think that Cheltenham on easy ground is going to be his cup of tea, I think.
He's an Entire as well, isn't he? He's a colt who Monksfield, would he have been the last Entire to win a Champion Hurdle? I can't think of many. Or maybe one of the... Anyway, I'll put it on the...
How about Alderbrook?
Alderbrook, he could have been, couldn't he? Yeah.
Alderbrook was Entire, I think, wasn't he?
He went to stud, didn't he? He did. Billy, anyway, he won't be going to Japan Constitution Hill because Nicky said he's going to go to Punchestown this week, didn't he? He's heading over to see all your Irish fans. He's going to have I think it's the 4th consecutive Punchestown Festival he's been coming to, but it's on the radar. We need to talk about Il Est Francais. GC, I'll come to you first with this. He's been given the 3 entries at Cheltenham. Tom George is keeping his cards close to his chest, but he's not very good at doing that because he virtually ruled out the Ryanair Chase yesterday and he's clearly fancying a tilt at a small field Gold Cup.
Yeah,
they're close to his chest, but they're the wrong way round, aren't they?
The real stream of consciousness piece from Noel George about the big field for the Ryanair and the others could cut up. And, I did suggest last week that the Gold Cup might be in their minds. And I hope you just want to see the very best horses in the Gold Cup, even if they go there with a stamina dart like he would. So I know keep again, put that also. I put it in the something to ponder file last week. Definitely keep it there because I'd like to see him in the Gold Cup.
Matt, we haven't had your thoughts on Ile Fronte. If you were playing your cards close to your chest, but you can reveal to us now what they would be, where would you head with him?
Down in distance, Dave. He's not a Gold Cup horse for me. For a horse who's broken blood vessels, on the record. Don't forget, he's only ever run a couple of times over 3 miles, and this is at Kempton on good ground. And you see horses run round, and this just doesn't strike me as a Cheltenham Gold Cup horse at all. You kind of do sense, listening to Noel George, his lengthy interview, that they still hold him in absolute highest regard, and they want him in elite company. It's not like they were sort of talking down the prestige of a Ryanair chase, but they were slightly talking down the prestige of a Ryanair race. I wouldn't mind him in the Champion Chase if that cuts up a bit. I think they could be quite tempted. I mean, they're pretty nailed to making the run in. He referred to that again about potentially getting an easy lead in the Gold Cup. I'd quite like to see him in the Champion Chase. I get the case for the Ryanair as well. Loads of options. I'm certainly not convinced he's a Gold Cup horse, but it's really good to hear that he's come out of Kempton well, and they think he's an absolute. They want him in the Crown Jewels, don't they? They want him going for a proper race to really cement his reputation.
I think he could look like he's going to win the Gold Cup at some point, coming down the hill. I think he has that level of speed.
First circuit.
No. Look, clip that, Dave. Clip that, Dave, for when he holds Galopin Champ in an epic duel by a short head.
As a grey dawning Ryanair backer, I would encourage them to go Champion Chase or Gold Cup.
Yep.
Having called Noel Tom to start with there, which was a belting start. In terms of, they train for the McManus's, don't they? I think he needs an afternoon with Frank Berry to learn how you do play your cards close to your chest. I'm sure he could be schooled in doing so. But it was a fantastic stream of consciousness, which has got us talking. David, just finally on the news, George Boughey was linked with buying Freemason Lodge. That's heading to Kiat and the Ammo team. But his ambitions are very clear. He's bought a new base in Newmarket, a former pre-training Godolphin yard that was up on the market for just shy of £2 million. He wanted his own place. He's got it. It's not going to be big enough for him, actually. It's 90 boxes. He's going to expand to 130. He's got 150 at the minute. But this is clearly a fiercely ambitious trainer who's looking to build and build.
Yeah, very much, like you say, going the right way, building year on year, already a classic winning trainer, got a proper Group 1 sprinter returning for another season in Believing. But I thought the interesting part from this story, as much as anything, wasn't who the purchaser was, but the vendor. And obviously it was the two Sheikh Mohammed yards, and Sheikh Mohammed not getting any younger, 75 years old, isn't he? And we've obviously seen the scaling back of the Bin Soroy yard over the last few seasons, and even Appleby, I think they had the smallest number of wins and runs since 2020 last year. So are we seeing a bit of a scaling down of the Godolphin operation, and what might that mean over the next few years or so? So, yeah, I thought that was the most interesting aspect of the story. But, yeah, definitely wish George Buffy well, and he's obviously very much going the right way in his career.
That's it, then. That, I think, is us for this week's...
He's still never trained a York winner, has he?
Sorry?
George, he's still never trained a York winner. That should be top of his agenda from the new place.
York winner full stop?
No York winners.
That's a disgrace, John.
Yep. Get believing in the Duke of York. That's got to be the way.
Those world's best racehorse rankings are due out anytime soon, and it could be that an ex-Bowie horse is top of the shop via Sistina. Yeah.
Oh, that's a good shout. Yeah. I think it's next week, isn't it? The star-studded ceremony at the Savoy, I believe the winners are announced. She's top on the time form numbers.
Yes, I think she is. She's in the 130s on that ridiculously looking performance out in Australia. Yeah.
My instant reaction to the news that George was shaking out the biscuit tin to buy a significant Newmarket yard was, Hong Kong probably off the radar now, because there were strong rumours that he might be on the Hong Kong Jockey Club's radar as a new Guilo European trainer. But if he's making a significant commitment to property in Newmarket, you would think that that's now very much on the back burner, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you see, to put it into perspective, that would be a very almost difficult thing to turn down, wouldn't it? The opportunity to go to Hong Kong and what's out there. It made you think long and hard anyway.
Well, if you have a look at David Eustace, who's just had a winner at Happy Valley already today, he's not made a super flying start, but he's made a really solid start, and he just seems to have the feel for it. And it's an unusual word, that, but I think Boughey has the feel for all levels of racing, including, you know, classics, as David said, 1,000 guineas winner, big sprints with Believing, etc. So he's no doubt a man on the rise, and given the fact that he's got Billy the Kid Loughnane at his right hand, that's going to be a team to watch all year long, I think.
It's his trainer whose strike rate's never wavered, is it? As he's risen through the ranks, he's maintained that healthy strike rate, as we will endeavour to do next week when we look ahead to Festival Trials Day at Cheltenham, the Timeform Novices Handicap Chase, the race that stops an office and a nation in many ways. We've got that to look forward to, as well as some other high-quality action. Thanks to DJ, to Matt, to GC and Billy for their time, and thank you very much for listening.
Download the Sporting Life app for the best racing coverage, including live racing blogs, fast results, stable tours, trainer and jockey interviews, expert opinion and tips.